That's Kat,
That's Ian.
and this is 404.
Script not found.
That's perfect. Like a terrible voice message. I love it.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited. I have a million questions.
Oh my gosh.
But I was hoping first if you could give a little overview, intro, spark notes of Bryan Bedford.
Dad, humanitarian, janitor. What did I
Started
get in?
football.
What did I get
Not to
into here? Jeez.
I know.
God. I mean, my story's like I think of it in 2 chapters. I spent 7 years on the team side of kind of sports and entertainment. I worked for 3 different teams, from selling to operations to coaching. And that was like a chapter of my life, like early in career. And I realized that I didn't want to be a nomad and live in different cities every couple years as a vagabond coach or administrator. And I thought, well, I should get into sales because recruiting and getting 16 and 17-year-olds to come play ball is the same as uh as what I thought recruiting or as I thought sales was. And so I started my sales journey, you know, almost 20 years ago and have kind of just, been able to kind of climb the corporate ladder in different companies doing that. And I've kind of stayed really close to media, sports, technology. My wife laughs because I can barely run the remote at home, but I figured out how to sell it. So that's my story. And I'm married and got 2 grown kids and all the fun stuff. So there you go.
And then can you talk about what you do now at Cisco? Because I would argue you have the coolest job at Cisco. You
Well,
have number one.
yeah, thank you. I'm a director in US commercial. And part of my responsibility is I run our business solutions team inside of US Commercial that supports really large strategic accounts, complex deals, and also helps our team manage through technology transitions and technology transformations and business innovation that's happening in the field. So, how we work with customers, how we work with partners, ecosystem, who do we need to help us, maybe have a line of business conversation, and how do we do that that is, helping our portfolio and connected teams really drive outcomes, and ultimately we want to drive sales and pipeline. So I mean, we're fundamentally part of the sales organization driving some of the most complicated and largest deals. A subset of that is this conversation, which is, we have all the teams, leagues, and venues. It's about 250 teams, leagues, and venues that are all part of US Commercial here at Cisco in the Americas. So that's the biggest sports brands that you could think of, the leagues and all of the teams and the venues that you go watch concerts, music, and sports. And those are complicated projects. The go-to-market's a little unique. The ecosystem, the solution stack is a little different. Not crazy different, but a little different enough to where there's some subtle challenges. And so we end up supporting that motion and then, all the kind of commercial and cool factor that comes with all of the different projects that are in the market. So yeah, that's a subset, but the day job's really running kind of a business solutions and innovation team at the field level. And then this is a piece of it, but there's many other things that we're working on that are kind of cross-functional and cross-industry.
It's incredible, and there are so many follow-ups that I have, but I wanna go back because how do we move from director of recruiting, TCU,
Yeah,
to I'm gonna go sell media and software?
yeah, okay, okay. When
How?
are we starting the podcast? Like, when does this start? Oh, are we in it?
It's
We're in it?
we're in it right
Oh,
now.
okay,
We're
well,
in it
I
right
mean, I'm just
now.
trying to think about, like, what are all the other questions that you're gonna ask me? No, I'm
I
kidding.
have so many,
You've got
Bryan.
so many
I have
questions.
so
No, I'm kidding. I just it's just funny. You know, I it's actually not a really complicated one, to be honest with you. Like, I was newly married, and I was working 8 jillion hours a week, and I was like, "I don't get to see my wife."
Mhm.
And, about 6 months after we got married, we got blessed with a surprise about 90 minutes before a home football game that we were gonna have a baby, and my wife called me and said, "Guess what? We're gonna have a baby, and I'm getting ready to go play in a bowl getting ready to coach in a bowl game," and I was like, "I'll be home after the game, and we're gonna figure it out." And, we weren't making a lot of money, and we were working a million hours, and my wife was really sick with our first child well, actually sick with both of our children, and I was just like, "I gotta figure out a way to, like, pay the bills." Like, just survive. Like, ramen noodles and OJ is not quite gonna cut it. So, like, we need to figure out how we do this. And so, yeah, I just figured that, if I can recruit 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, then I can go and I can figure out how to do sales. So I started as an account manager. Just carried a bag
Mhm.
and learned how to sell and learn how to build relationships. And then that just evolved. And I worked for a smaller company and got some experience. And then I got recruited to come to Cisco almost 15 years ago. And they wanted somebody to build out the partner strategy for sports media and entertainment, and I did that, and then I've taken a couple different roles. I've worked in CX, I've worked in our industrial IoT group, I've worked in the channel, I've been in our industry solutions group team as a director and now in our commercial business in the field, and so all of those has helped me really learn Cisco kind of comprehensively. But it just goes back to the basics, like customer intimacy, knowing your customer, understanding what's their problem, how do they make money, what are their business challenges, how do we solve it? It's a lot of common sense stuff. But, to answer your question, it just came back to like, I need to put I need to feed a little baby, and
Yeah.
and I needed to take care of my wife, and I wasn't making a lot of money, and not that it's all about money, but, you gotta have enough to kinda survive, and
Yeah, I mean, at some point.
the 1,000 square foot apartment and the OJ and ramen were not quite cutting it for a newlywed with
No.
a baby on the way, so I was like, "I better figure out how to go sell," and we live in Oklahoma City, and I wanted to figure out how I could stay in Oklahoma City without having to that was home, and we were living in Fort Worth at the time, and it was like, how do we get back, and what's that gonna look like? So, yeah, it was a fun journey, but, that's kinda my that's the chapters. That's all what gets you to this spot.
And it's incredible because it's brought what a full circle moment of where
Yeah,
you are now
yeah.
and setting this up with Cisco. And now I'm curious, how do you use that experience then to talk to your customers now and understand what these teams, stadiums, what hospitality is looking for? Because I feel like you have so much experience the typical seller does not.
I mean, just a good old boy from Oklahoma, cat, but I just try to be really pragmatic. I mean, I feel like every customer that we talk to, whether you're in healthcare or manufacturing or sports and entertainment, which is kind of your fun topic for today, they all ask kind of the same questions.
Mhm.
How do you save money with Cisco? How do you make money with Cisco? And how do you operationalize and secure the building with Cisco or our properties? I mean, those are kind of like the biggest questions. Like I try to explain technology like I'd explain it to my grandma. Like grandma doesn't understand the bits and bytes. She just understands like I want my kids protected. I want my house to not cost me $1 million. Like, they want
Yeah.
practical things, and I think that, being able to just have a real common sense question, or common sense conversation is kinda what I guess has led me to some success. I
Mhm.
just like being really, like, pragmatic. What's your challenge, Cat? Okay, why did you make that choice, Cat? What's the reason for doing like, just to ask questions that, most of our customers are gonna tell us that, and I think that being able to kind of be pragmatic about that is kind of what's been a little bit of I don't know if that's my superpower or whatever you want to call it. That's kind of what's given that. And then the other thing is finding and looking at industry trends that have been ones that have allowed us to scale, not, and I've been fortunate to be able to do that in a couple different places. Like early in my career, I'll give you a kind of a crazy kind of example of this that's
Yeah, what a crazy
non-crypto
example.
related, but, like, crazy and wacky is, like, I was one of the early people that was out there that understood how instant replay worked in college football or just worked in football alone, and so I feel like I'm one of the OGs. Like, I'm a grandfather of the world of instant replay. Well, now everybody talks about it, but I remember thinking, like, nobody knows what I'm doing on a Saturday in, like, 2005 and, like,
That's
what's
crazy.
going on and how people are doing, and I mean, it wasn't quite bubble gum and, whatever the analogy is, right? But it wasn't very far off of that, and I was thinking,
Mhm.
"Holy cow." Like, this is crazy. And that, it's ubiquitous, like, that's happening. You look at, pervasive high density Wi-Fi in stadiums. We've sold 25,000 units. This is public information, by the way, but, sold 25,000 units of our high density overhead access point. Okay, we've scaled the business, right? Or, you look at there's many, many other technologies that we've deployed. That's been really cool. And so I think just having common sense question or, common sense approach to business problems and thinking pragmatically about those things and then finding solutions that are, maybe early to market that we can scale has been where I've spent a lot of my time and what's given me, hopefully the career that I've got today. So it's been kind of fun.
Awesome. And when your sellers are in the field, when you are in the field or when you're talking to customers, where are sports, hospitality, media executives investing today in their technology? Like, what trends are you seeing?
Um, well, I think, the first thing, I mean, I feel like it's almost Mythbusters now, but most of these teams don't have very big IT staffs. Like
See, I would never know that.
they're
I
really
would
big
never.
brands, but they're not huge IT staffs. Some of them do. I don't, some of them do, but by and large, when you take the size of their brand compared it to their IT staffs, they're not really equal, right? The IT staffs are pretty small for the most part. And so they want a trusted partner to help them kind of manage through their life cycle of the building. I mean, most of these CIOs are going to build one stadium in their life. I mean, a buildings,
Mhm.
you only build so many buildings,
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of like, if you get like the 2.0 version of a building in a city, like you've been there a minute.
Mhm.
And so, the life cycle of a stadium's, 25 or 30 years. So, you think about your career. I mean, maybe you did it early in career and you were like an individual contributor and you've worked your way up and now you're in a decision making role. But, if they've stayed in a market and then they haven't really done a whole lot of these. And so what they're looking for is like a trusted expert that can say, you've done this before. Like, we
Mhm.
don't want to fall in the same pitfalls. So help us work through that. Help us understand the trends. And then, where they're investing, that's kind of the why they're investing, kind of where they're investing. Um, the these are becoming very large media centers. Wi-Fi
Yeah.
continues to be really, really important, and it's important because it's data and information, and it can impact the customer journey. But the content world is so important that they're building out little mini data centers. They're building out broadcast environments. All of that is IP. They've got to think through their security posture, major events, World Cup or Olympics or, a Super Bowl or any of those events that are happening. They've got to be prepared for that or just a concert with, 20,000 people. It doesn't matter. Any of those things are examples of where they've got to be, thinking about things that are happening, and bad actors. So, and then now the most progressive, CIOs are thinking about their kind of big data strategy. Big
Mhm.
data, security, observability. So they're starting to think about what does that ultimately look like? What do we do? And can we have a single pane of glass to make informed decisions around the building? And so, today, that investment has carried us to about 500 plus venues worldwide. And so it's really been exciting. We're really seeing rapid adoption of new technologies. People are also trying to solve business problems through technologies. Again, go back to the kind of the impetus of they don't have huge staffs. The staffs that they do are a lot of like game day staff that come in just to work game days. So when they think about the movement of people, ingress and egress is kind of the technical terms in the industry, but it's basically people parking and getting into the building or efficiently getting out or queuing or people management. Those are real life things that impact, cars, public safety, transportation, security. Those are all like real life, like public works issues. And then as you think about kind of, how do they maximize, the investment? Obviously, they want to think about an ROI on that building or that new stadium or that existing stadium. And so what's their data strategy, what's their, Wi-Fi, what's their connectivity, what's their commercial strategy, how do they work, and how do they blend the commercial teams with their technology teams. Those are the ones that are the most successful is when they're really bringing all those different stakeholders together to think about what are their business challenges and how they solve it. So, yeah, it spans the gamut of all sorts of really cool stories, which for us, Kat, is, like, awesome because hopefully on one of these podcasts, you've talked about kinda One Cisco and kinda the platform approach,
Mhm.
and ultimately, that's what we can bring is that we can bring a platform approach to these stadiums, and again, they don't have really big IT teams for the most part. And so if you can simplify that and think, "Hey, we can help you on your full journey," like, that's pretty compelling. That's pretty cool, and they want that.
And I feel like I have to ask while we're on this, are we seeing them invest heavily in AI just like everyone else is?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the difference in sports entertainment is that um, there are kinda league tenants that are coming out that the leagues are thinking about on different sides of it. So they'll have initiatives that are, related to, player information, player data, player performance, um, contracts, draft information, player safety, all the different things that you would imagine, right? That would kinda so there's elements of that they're looking at all sorts of AI that, most of the drafts that you're seeing this year, there was some
Mhm.
level of AI that was into how they're acquiring and doing talent acquisition, so you see it on that side of things. You may or may not have read, we just announced a partnership in that space on the kinda player talent acquisition side with a company called Sumer Sports that we announced recently where they're leveraging our AI pods. So their LLM is playing on our AI pods, so that's, like, super cool. Um, and then on the venue side of things, I mean, yeah, they're looking at all sorts of computer vision, queuing, people management, people counting. They're leveraging thing like Cisco Spaces to kinda leverage that, but they're also looking at other kind of, AI built into, how they look at point of sale terminals, how they, track retail inventory. There's just a whole litany of things when they get into that, and so, one of the things that we've been kind of incubating is Splunk in sports, like, that's kind of a thing now.
Yeah,
And so, like, we're
yeah.
talking about, okay, how do you take AI and think through your big data strategy? And so that comes into, like, making informed decisions on, different places in the building, but also digging down into, like, your building management systems and how do you make the buildings more intelligent. So, yeah, there's all sorts of cool stuff, Kat, that people are coming up with. So, yeah, the sky's the limit with AI, I can tell you that.
And then I'm going off my
I is
questions.
this
This is a
is this gonna be
follow-up
like
one.
a 3-hour podcast, by the way? Are we
I
going?
I'm gonna say well, unfortunately, we have to stop at 4:30 your time. I'm sad because we have to do 20,000,000 parts because I have only scratched the surface of my question. But I'm dying to know, okay, so I'm gonna use the Packers as an example. I'm a Packers fan. When it comes to IT for Lambeau or for that team, how much is being regulated by being a part of a league? Like being a part of a NFL league, does it matter at all, or are there certain
Yeah. They
constraints?
have
Oh,
requirements for all sorts of categories. They have benchmarks that they look at, without getting into a bunch of specifics. They've got benchmarks for, cybersecurity. They've got benchmarks for, on-field communications. They've got things like private 5G, that the league is mandated for coaches communication. They've got different thresholds for wireless. So yeah, they've set benchmarks. Every league has set
mhm.
benchmarks for different things. They'll have different, dimensions for where cameras can go, where they like they've got it kind of down to a science. And then they give, most leagues will give the choice. Sometimes they'll have things that teams can opt into that they want to take advantage of. And then some, and then in a lot of cases, the teams are free to kind of make their own choices. Thankfully, we've got a good, healthy chunk of them that are customers. And so, but yeah, I mean, it's the they're part of another way to say that is they're kind of part of a consortium, like, they work together.
Mhm.
They're governed they kinda self-govern each other, and they work together, and they've got the league to kinda help, put policy and structure in place. And that's kinda like your local city government. You need them to kinda play a role in that, and so the leagues do the same thing, so, yeah, I mean, it's the balancing act of what's dictated at the league level and then what's dictated at the team level, and then the leagues do things on their own because 'cause they've got rights and things that they've got in facilities that they manage too. So, yeah, it's a combination of efforts for sure.
The infrastructure is so interesting to me. And then the stadiums are obviously very different based on investment. Like SoFi is going to be so different from Bank of America. What would you say? I'll leave you with this one. 10 years from now, what do you think's the stadium of the future? What do you think we'll see change?
I mean, we're gonna have, like, flying drones for your popcorn, right? Is that what I'm supposed to say? Um,
Yeah, tell me or what's happening?
yeah, I don't
Cisco
know.
Spaces, obviously.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
Cisco Spaces,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah. I mean, I think that there'll be just more of um I think the content side of these spaces are continues to be like a kind of a central nervous system. And if you think about and I say it that way on purpose. If you look at Wi-Fi as an example, originally it was, okay, they need to download an app or there's some sort of a download mechanism, right? Well, that's flipped on its head. It's actually the opposite of that. Right now, everybody, if it's not on Instagram or it's not on TikTok or you're not pushing it out, you weren't even there, right? Like you didn't even go to the concert. Like I live in Oklahoma City. I went to a Thunder playoff game. I didn't put anything on Instagram. It was like I wasn't even there this week, right? And
No one knew.
it was not there, right? But I was there, but I didn't put it on Instagram. So now it's about uploading, showing you were there. Now my 21-year-old, she put it out there. She was on Instagram, right? She's sharing with the world that, I say that to say that like that's the content is the piece of that. It's the connective tissue to that. The same thing as you think about now, like the co-development that we're doing with NVIDIA around what they call media exchange layer, which is leveraging like our IP fabric or our Nexus products with their Holoscan platform. That those are the types of things where you're going to see AI and IP. They're really the networks and the data center and all the applications and all the software. That stuff is going to get more realistic. It's going to get better. You're going to do real time language translations. You're going to be able to do all sorts of really cool multilingual graphics. You're going to be able to do all sorts of cool stuff. So that we're not very far away. We're 18 months away. Not even that probably from that happening. So we're actually really close to where that's going to be a thing. The actual technology's there. It's just
Mhm,
it's putting business processes. What you're gonna see over the next few years is really around how do we manage change? Because the technology's happening faster than people can consume it. It was like I was
mhm.
listening to you and Ian talk about like should I use Claude or ChatGPT? Like the technology's there, but you are trying to think about how do I use it? How do I apply it? What do I use? Which LLM do I use? That's a change management issue. The technology is there. So we're going to see that happen now. And so I think, the modern day venue, it's going to get more content focused. It's going to get more frictionless. It's going to get more biometric centric. And I think it's going to know more about you than it ever has. When you go into a building, it should know it's your birthday. It should know what you like to drink or eat. It should know when you've been there. It should know all that. Whether you want it to know that or not is a different
That's
topic, right?
crazy.
It's kind of like when Google's listening to you, unfortunately, or
Yeah.
whatever, search engines on your phone, right? These phones listen to us, whether we want to believe that or not. The buildings will have more intelligence. They will be predictable. They will know who you are and what you do and whether you like Coke or Pepsi or whatever you like. They're going to know those things. And I think that the buildings are getting more and more sophisticated and smarter, and the people who are running and operating them are now much more like they've kind of grown into where this is not like a new thing. This has become
Mhm.
an expectation. Whereas like 10 years ago, it was like, do we really need Wi-Fi? And
That's
now, and
crazy.
now
Yeah.
it's if I can do it at the local coffee shop, I should be able to do it when there's 80,000 people there. And the reality is that
Mhm.
the technology underneath all of that is fundamentally different at a scale differently. Um, but the change management that goes with that is not to be, there's just a lot there. So yeah, it's a cool challenge.
It's interesting when you say that because my marketing brain immediately goes, if we had all that information, I'm going to serve Kat an ad for a Bud Light on Instagram as soon as she walks in. And there's an easy sell left and right. That's crazy that they'll have that level of intel.
I mean, they have it now.
Gosh, it's crazy.
You're gonna turn
I
into a
want
full-blown nerd after this
You have
podcast.
no idea, Brian. Thank you so much. The juxtaposition of teaching you how to put yourself on Do Not Disturb to the way that you described all of our technology, incredible. We
I
really came
I
for full
told
circle.
you at the beginning of this podcast, I can't run any of this stuff, but I know how to talk about it. No, I mean, I shouldn't sell myself too short. I mean, I've figured out a few things, but there's a few jobs that I'm not great at turning. I'll just say it that way. So,
No, incredible.
I have
Thank you
figured out
so
how to
much.
log into, like, Netflix and, and Hulu and all
And
that fun,
thank God.
which is like
Thank
a pain in
God.
the butt right now if you're a sports lover, because like, all the games are on different
There are
channels.
so many
Oh
different
my gosh,
Yeah,
the pain. So
I know. Thank you so much. This was awesome. If you like the episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Until next time.
Thank you for listening.